Hi, my name is Mike Yeager. I'd like to share with you an incredible testimony, a story that happened to my wife and I back in approximately 1980. You see, I was pastoring a church up in Three Springs, Pennsylvania, an Assembly of God church. And the parsonage we were living in was extremely old. And it looked extremely flammable because it was made of pine. And I decided in my heart that I wanted to help heat the church by putting a wood stove in the basement. Now the basement was made of all the old rock, like the Pennsylvania flat rock. And so I put a wood stove in there and I hooked it into an old flue. Now when I hooked the wood stove into the old flue, the problem is that the wood stove did not have a good enough draft. And so I'm going to share with you what exactly happened, because it is an incredible miracle that God did. So the house I'm living in right now is a very, very nice house. And so when you look at it, it's not going to seem to be near as impressive as if I could do it on that piece of property. But we're going to go into the basement of this house, and I'm just going to kind of give you an illustration of what happened when we tried to heat that house with an old wood stove. So I had this wood stove, and I began to build fires with it. The only problem was I could not get the fire going. And when I did get the fire going, sometimes it would get so stinking hot where I literally thought that I was going to burn the house down. And so I would play and play and play with this old wood stove, and then I would get it going, and then it would get so stinking hot that almost every single time I would get my hand up against the wood stove and I would burn myself. Now you would think I would ask God to give me wisdom in order how to build the fire and not get burned, but something else came into my heart. I found the scriptures where it says that the flame would not kindle upon you and that you would not be burned. And I began to meditate upon scriptures that the fire could not burn me and the flame could not kindle upon me. And so sure enough, every time it seemed like I'd turn around and I'd get myself burned by that fire once again. And the minute I would get up against that hot stove, I would touch my hand and I would pray over the burn. Well, this went on for month after month through the winter. One month during that winter time, the stove was cherry red, and I actually got the back of my hand up against the stove, and I knew because it was cherry red, I was really going to have a bad burn now. So I put my hand over my other hand, and I spoke healing over that burn, and I commanded it not to blister and for all pain to go. Well, in a matter of minutes, the pain left, and it was just a slight pink. Well, the winter got over with, and one morning I got up to make breakfast early. Now, when I got up to make breakfast early, I had an old black Skillet frying pan, and I put it on the stove, and I put some vegetable grease into the frying pan, and I put it on the stove. And so let me just illustrate what happened to you. So I put that oil into the skillet stove, and then I turned my stove on. Now, over the top of the skillet frying pan was a bunch of pine cabinets. They were really old pine cabinets. And so when this happened, on my face, Stephen, when this happened, there was a knock on the door. And when I went to answer the door, and as I answered the door, a friend of mine was there, and his name was Paul Waite, and so I let Paul Waite in. Well, Paul and I got to talking about the things of God, because we would go out and share Christ together in the carnivals and the fairs, and we're talking about the Lord, when all of a sudden my wife began to scream. So I ran back to the kitchen, and to my total horror and shock, that black iron skillet had gotten so hot it had turned cherry red, and the vegetable oil in that in the frying pan had exploded in the fire. Now the flames were going way, way high, and I knew the house was going to burn down like an old Christmas tree. And so without even thinking, and it was a red hot skillet frying pan, I grabbed a hold of that frying pan into my bare hands, and the flames were leaping all the way up to the ceiling. And I yelled to Paul, wait, I said, Paul, open the door. And I carried that red hot skillet all the way over to the door, and it's still burning. I ran outside and I jumped down into the yard, and I took that frying pan and I turned it upside down, and 2 of the flames were all out. Now, when the fire got out, I'm standing there, and all of a sudden it hits my heart, and I realized what I did. I picked up that cherry red hot frying pan into my bare hands. Paul Waite and my wife Kathy saw it, and that red hot skillet pan should have burned all the way down into my bones. But when I looked at my hands, they were only a slight pink, and I did not get one blister. Now, I'm not bragging about Mike Yeager because I was stupid that day. I'm bragging about Jesus Christ. I'm talking about the mercy of God and the goodness of God and the miracles of God. And I want you to know that God still does miracles. Now, that's only one of my stories of literally hundreds of stories of God's divine protection and provision and guidance and blessings. And I just want you to know that the God I serve, the miracles He does for me, He'll do for you.